So I realized that I hadn't discussed putting a roof on this or just stringing out some kind of a fabric structure. So let's just review that for a second, what I've done here. And I've gone and I've tightened up the geometry here so that this all make a nice little output. And in order to get it on the sheet, just before we get to defining how we made the roof, you can go to File and export the workspace as an image. And if you're not zoomed in far enough, you'll get none of the words right showing up. So if you zoom in here until they show up, and then you go to export as an image, it'll capture the whole definition for you as a PNG file so that you can place it in other documents. And there's one other hack on the Revit side in order to get it to show up, and I'll cover that in a minute. So back to this idea of making the roof. We already have the NURBS line for the curve, and I'll just make that visible so you can see it. So I'll just temporarily turn the preview on for that. And what we don't have is the mirror for it. So what I've done is I went ahead and grabbed this. Actually, let's just unhook this for a minute. And what I'll do is I'll put this out of the way and we'll go through this whole concept again. So we have our NURBS curve, and I'm going to grab this and copy it. So I'm going to go Control C and V. And we now want to just mirror that NURBS geometry over. And if we preview this, we now have the two shapes. And I'm just going to add that and the other geometry, the original geometry, back again. So instead of grabbing something from up there, I'm just going to grab the curve in here. And now I have two NURBS curves summed up in there, and I'm flattening them out. I don't have to. I can actually just delete this. Let me go ahead and delete it. Oops. Not completely delete it. Sorry. And I'll go ahead and ungroup this. All right. So now we have our list of our two NURBS curves. What I'll do is I'm going to turn these previews off just so we keep moving. And I'll turn this preview on so we can see those two curves again. And now what we need to do is get them lofted, which means we use, in this case, a surface by loft. And so if I type in surface dot, it'll come up by loft, which means it's just taking some cross sections and, oops, not the surface with cross sections. We want to do the surface by loft, which is just two cross sections without a guide curve. So I've selected that. Let me delete this one. We're going to put that in there, and now we have a form that appears. And we'll go ahead and I'm just going to keep turning off the elements that we don't want to use. So we have now a surface, but it's not actually in Revit yet. If I was to close off now, you see there's nothing appearing here. And there could be, if I turn, in some cases it would show up as a preview element, but we want it to have a real materiality to it. So we're going to go to the next step and then use the direct shape by geometry. And let's go and just look for that straight out. We'll go to elements, and it's an adaptive component. It's in the adaptive components, and it's direct shape. So that's any shape by geometry. And we'll select that. And then ask us to answer some questions. Well, first of all, we can stick the geometry right in. But we need this idea of assigning it for a category. So categories. Categories is something that will return any category that's in the Revit document. In this case, we'll just use a generic model. And this is just because Revit's so specific about its BIM tracking. And the next thing is we need some kind of materiality. And we have to use material by name. Oops, backwards. Let's look for it any other way. Let's go and try to think this through. Well, we're in the Revit, and we want to find the elements. So we want a material. And I'm not finding it here either. And I want to do this quickly. Oh, here it is, material. By name, input string. And we get the material out. So I'm going to delete this. And we need that idea of a string. And the string is just alphanumeric letter string. And we'll just use glass because glass is usually always available. And we'll plug that into the material. And we're kicking out an error, and I'm not exactly sure why. Element's not registered. I don't really think that's a legitimate error. But anyway, what I'll do is I'll just group these all together just like we did the other one. Make it basically the same color. Oops, brighter. And we'll call it Make Roof. And then I'll go ahead and delete this one. And we'll go out to Revit, and there we have our glass roof. Now we just have one more issue, and that's how to figure out how to get rid of it in this view. So let's just discuss a little bit about what I've done here to get us set up for a final document. I've created some display text. Actually, I want to make this one a little bit bigger, so I'll make a display text too. So I went through and I duplicated, let's say this is larger. And we'll make this, well, if it's 1/2 inch now, let's go to 5/8. And these look a little large, so let's make those a little smaller. Let's go down to 3/8. So all of that's really easy to make adjustments to. For this presentation, the whole back sheet is one view of the fully assembled truss. I don't have the ones in the ground plane hidden. I could hide those individually if I wanted to. If we went to the 3D view that we're using for this, I could just do hide in view by each specific element that's showing up. Whoops, that's an ugly way to do it because it's just, there we go. So I'll just tediously go through this just to clean that up a little bit. Let's see if I can catch it. I can't catch that other one easily. So that's the background view. Let's go back to the sheet. I've overlaid that with the PNG export of the Dynamo file, and I had to do a little bit of a hack there. If I go to the site, what I've done is I placed that on the site, and if I turn off the crop box here, you'll see what I've done. So this is the site, and I've imported that image onto here, and that's just a way to trick it to showing up on the screen. If I place this directly on the sheet, it'll end up behind the screen or behind the other image. So I've just added this as a layer that Revit will handle more pleasantly. So I'm just going to go back and crop this view again. And then, so site is placed on the drawing. We go back to the sheet. Oops. This is just that site laying on there. This is a crop box or a scope box neck down, so I'm just showing the one single rib in an expanded size view. But if we were to click on through here, what we've got to do is figure out how to get the glass knot to show. And that looks a little bit tricky, so I don't know if I'm going to be able to easily. I get that. Hide in view by category. Yeah, everything goes away because it's all thinking it's direct shape. And it really even shouldn't be showing because it's inside of the section box. I guess I'll give one more shot at trying to get rid of it. Let's go to the rib flat. And now it's hidden view. We might be just seeing also the preview of the other element underneath it. So I'm going to go back out to Dynamo to make sure that I haven't left. I do still have Surface by Loft on, so if I'm going to take the preview off of that. And let's see if that made it go away. I think it did. So there's some screwing around that we have to do to get everything to look nice. And then the dimensions, I turned white and got rid of the fill on them and just showed a few examples of that and called it dynamically dimensioned drawings because these actually would just change if we change any of the parameters with inside a Dynamo, just like any BIM model works, but the next level up as far as automating it into 2D plan drawings. So I think that's a pretty good example of what I'd like to see for your submittal. That indicates you went through all of the processes that were necessary. And like I said, I encourage you to make the rib look a little snazzier if you want, or do any kind of design changes that you might see fit or interesting.